We reported last night President Obama is drastically accelerating his effort to empty out and then close the terror prison at Guantanamo Bay. And there are new questions being raised now about his methods and justifications for
it.
them.
It is expensive, it is unnecessary, and it only serves as a recruitment brochure for our enemies. There's a better way.
7 years after his inauguration and one of his first acts in the Oval Office.
The process whereby Guantanamo will be closed no later than 1 year from now.
President Obama is now trying hard to make good on that pledge without Congress, releasing Gitmo detainees slowly at first, but now in large groups, a trickle that has become a waterfall of releases to countries that agree to take them.
JTF Gitmo split the detainee population into 3 different categories, ranging from low risk to medium risk to high risk. When he came into office, we've analyzed the 240 detainees who were there on his first day in office. 75% of them were deemed high risk by Joint Task Force Guantanamo. President Obama's own task force didn't find a single innocent guy at Guantanamo, didn't recommend a single guy for release. So you're dealing with a high-risk population here. So as these high-risk detainees are released or transferred abroad, what you're seeing is more and more risk of these guys going back to the battlefield and doing real harm.
Half a world away in the African nation of Ghana, citizens are angry, calling into radio talk shows, posting all over social media in Ghana after the country agreed to take 2 Yemeni Gitmo detainees this week. The outcry was so great, Ghana's president called a rare press conference to defend the move.
Extensive consultation was held both internally and externally. A risk assessment was done by the U.S. itself, and these 2 detainees, Al-Dubi and Benatef, were considered to be the most compliant detainees in Guantanamo camp, and they were put in the lowest risk category in Guantanamo. And let me be clear, people say ex-convicts. They were never tried, they were never charged, they were never convicted. These were 20-year-old boys. I will not take any decision that would jeopardize the safety and security of this country.
The problem is the 2 Yemenis released were not the lowest risk. In fact, one of them was classified the highest risk of posing a, quote, threat to the U.S., its interests, and its allies. That's the assessment of Joint Task Force Guantanamo. Mohammed Omar Mohammed bin Atef is described as a highly trained al-Qaeda fighter who, quote, continues to demonstrate his support for Osama bin Laden and extremism. And most troubling, the report says, quote, he has threatened to kill U.S. citizens on multiple occasions, including a specific threat to cut their throats upon release.
They looked at their military capability and their intent. And this is someone who fought for al-Qaeda, who was trained by al-Qaeda, and then throughout his time in custody, he had this intent to harm Americans. And these 2 things together are what made him a high risk, in their opinion. What Ghana's saying about these 2 guys isn't accurate, and you know, if you look at what the White House and what the administration says, they basically are not refuting it. They're not going to knock it down. So it leads you to the impression that, in fact, this is what they told Ghana about these 2 guys, and it's just flat wrong.
In fact, when the Weekly Standard's Steve Hayes, for a Wall Street Journal piece, pressed the information minister at Ghana's embassy in Washington about why Ghana agreed to take these Yemeni detainees, the minister said the U.S. government provided assurances in writing that, quote, Mr. bin Atef was never involved in terrorism and presented little risk. Quote, if that assurance was not there, he said, there is no way his government would have taken the detainees. So how does the White House square that disparity? Miles Coggins, a spokesman for the National Security Council, would not address Hayes' question directly, saying, quote, I don't have any comment on information that may have been made public by WikiLeaks. The Guantanamo Task Force and the subsequent process to clear detainees for transfer was focused on mitigating any potential threats. We'll let the statement by Ghana stand.
A lot of these countries that take on the Guantanamo detainees can't actually keep them off the battlefield. We find that they go back to the fight pretty quickly. And in fact, to this day, right now, of course, somebody who was transferred from Guantanamo just a couple years ago is now one of the most senior al-Qaeda leaders on the planet.
Make sure that you look for Steve and Tom's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal posting online tonight.